Hi everyone, a new challenger on the M-ATX form factor arena, which is none other than this Asus ROG Strix B850-G gaming Wi-Fi. Now there are tons of things I'd like to talk about this, and for your information, this is not out for sales yet. It's a brand new M-ATX board from Asus. I'd like to thank Asus Singapore to have provided this board for me to share with everyone. Now when you first unbox this box, this is what you will get. The antenna, which is pure white, the quick starter guide, the Asus web storage, a flyer of all the stickers. Now all these accessories that you see here, right, are packed nicely in this Ziploc bag, which has a very nice logo. Nice. You'll be provided with additional M.2 screws and standoffs. This is the additional clip which you will find on the motherboard itself. If any damages, right, you can make use of this to replace them. Additional of M.2 rubber pad, zip ties, a set of SATA cables where you have one right angle, the other straight, and a keychain. None other than a very beautiful white board. This board is built rock solid. The whole PCB is in white with grey wordings and a touch of grey on the socket points, like the 24 pin, the 8 pin EPS, there are two of it, the SATA port and such. Nicely done. Best part of all, right, this PCB is of 8 layer and it has 2 ounces of copper traces throughout the whole board. This will bring stability to the motherboard. And further on with the design, as you can see, a very sleek label that says Strix. This is popping up nicely. And at the side where it has this, for those who dare, if I am to tilt, see, very nice rainbow effect. Nicely done. And at the top section where you have this crest, right, by the way, this whole casting, right, is plastic. And of course the VRM heatsink, right, be it the rear or the side, these are aluminum. Now speaking about the crest, this is with ARGB effects, where you can control the lighting effects using Armory Crate, the Aura Sync, or there is an add-in function where you can trigger on UEFI to enable a add-in plugin on Windows, which is known as the dynamic lighting effect, which I'll show you later. Now as mentioned, this is a M-ATX motherboard. It has a measurement of 244 by 244, and the thickness of the side VRM and the rear VRM heatsink, this is at 35mm and this is at 45mm. For the power face of this board, it is of 14 plus 2 plus 1 and it's of 80M choke, and this is more than enough to cater for a high-end processor, be it the 7000 series or the 9000 series. Now as mentioned, it supports 7000 and 9000, also inclusive of the 8000 series, using this 17-18 socket. Right at the bottom you have 4 DIMM slot, and it has a max capacity of 256 gig, and it runs in dual channel, and it has a overclocking profile, be it XMP profile or Expo profile at 8000. This board only comes with one PCIe slot, which is full 16, meant for your GPU, and this is controlled by the processor. This is of Gen 5 and backward compatible. And at all times when you plug your graphic card, right, it will run at full speed x16, and there are no lane sharing. For the build of this PCIe slot, there is this reinforced metal, nicely done. And when you want to remove off the graphic card, all is needed is just to press this and you will release this catch, and you can just plug your graphic card out. As for the M.2, there are a total of 4, 3 over here and 1 at the back. Now something unique about this board, whereby all the M.2, again, no lane sharing. And for the first 2 slots, this is controlled by the processor. The first slot is Gen 4, the second slot is Gen 5. Yep, you never heard me wrong. The second slot is Gen 5. Reason for them to cater this way, as if you want to populate a Gen 5 M.2, right, it's going to generate heat. And if you're going to place it here, right, it's right below your graphic card. So it will generate even more heat So there will be more, I would say, the heat absorption right on the board will be a lot. So they have done a very clever method whereby they have allocated the second slot as Gen 5, the first slot as Gen 4, and both are backward compatible. Next, on the third slot and the fourth slot, which is at the back, both are controlled by the chipset and both are of Gen 4. And all these M.2 slots right are backward compatible, and all these M.2 are running at a max speed of X4. There are no lane sharing. Now coming to the locking mechanism, okay, let me just zoom in. Starting off with the top slot, you will need to insert the pin at the back. Then over here you have this latch over here. Pull it and press it down. And to release it, just press this and you will just release, and you can just take it out. As for the rest of the M.2 slot, the second and third, instead of plugging to the rear, right, plug to the front. Okay, let me just zoom in. Plug to the front and just press it down. And to release, just remove this clip. Now, as mentioned to you, right, there is an additional clip provided with the accessory. In the event if this were to break, right, you can replace this totally. So on the second and the third is making use of this clip. Else for the rear, okay, over here, this you will make use of the M.2 standoff and the screws in order to fasten your M.2, and this doesn't come with a armor shield, so take note on this. Now speaking about the armor shield, I deliberately taken it out so that I can show you how to clip it back. To clip it back, right, just plug this two notch at this. Okay, starting from the rear, then press it down. To release it, right, just push this and to take it out. The heatsink itself is very beefy, and there's only thermal pad on one side, which is at the top. There are none at the bottom. So this is more than enough to cool down your M.2s. This board does come with a onboard audio, which is making use of the ALC 1220p 7.5 surround sound high definition codec. And as for the connection, starting from this is the TPM module, and on my lower left, this is meant for your front I/O, headphone and microphone jack. A 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, total of 3 4-pin PWM fan headers, where it states chassis fan 1, chassis fan 2 and chassis fan 3, and all these headers are of 1 ampere. 2 USB 2.0 socket, the front I/O pinouts where you plug your power switch, your reset switch, your power LED and your hard disk LED. And right at the top over here, there are a total of 4 pins. Let me just zoom in. Now for this 4 pin, right, 2 pins is meant for chassis intrusion, 2 pin is meant for your T sensor. Yep, that's right, you can purchase an additional T sensor probe, where one end you plug to this 2 pin, the other end where the probe is, you can sense any of the components for temperature, and this temperature will be reflecting on hardware info 64 or IDA 64. Now moving to the front, let me just zoom out. Okay, better caption over here. 2 right angle SATA port, where it caters either 2.5 inch hard disk or 3.5 inch hard disk. So their total capacity storage is of 6, where you can connect 4 M.2s together with 2 hard disks, and all these are without lane sharing. The 3.0 port, where it's meant for your front I/O type A port, and this is having a transfer rate of 5 gig. Next you have this type C front I/O connector, where it has a transfer rate of 10 gig, followed by a 24 pin socket, where you plug your PSU 24 pin cable to this to supply power to your motherboard. Next you have this start button, a very useful function where you can test this board outside of the case. Well done. Next you have 2 more additional 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, and moving on the top, there are a total of 3 4-pin PWM fan headers, whereby this is CPU fan and this is CPU op. At all times when you're using air cooler fans or the liquid AIO radiator fans, right, plug it to the CPU_1, okay, which is the CPU fan. Do not plug directly straight to here, which is the CPU fan op, because this does not have any control. The actual command is coming from CPU fan, where you can control the PWM fan on UEFI. And if you fancy to put push-pull configuration on a liquid AIO, first set of fans you should plug on your CPU fan, and the next set you should plug on the CPU op, whereby the CPU op take instruction from the CPU fan. So take note on this. And as for liquid AIO pump headers, right, make sure you connect to this gray header, as this will provide a consistent amperage to your pump to run it consistent. And all these headers are running of 1 ampere, or should I say drawing a current of 1 ampere. There is a debug LED lights over here. There are a total of 4. So in the event if you do boot up a system and there are errors and such, right, it will post the lights over here, so that for you to troubleshoot the problems. Next, you have two 8-pin EPS connector, which is to supply power to your processor. At the rear, you have two projection port. At the top is a display port version 1.4, having the capability to project up to 8K 30Hz. At the bottom, which is the HDMI port, which is version 2.1 and has the capability to project up to 4K 60Hz. And both of this projection port is making use of the integrated graphic on your processor. There are a total of 8 USB type A port, and on the black ones is version 2.0. For the blue ones and the red ones are version 3.2. The blue ones are generation 1, which has a transfer rate of 5 gig. The red ones, which is generation 2, having a transfer rate of 10 gig. Additional 2 more USB type C port, whereby this has a transfer rate of 10 gig and this has a transfer rate of 20 gig. A clear CMOS button, a BIOS flashback button where you have a LED indication over here. And to make use of this BIOS flashback, please refer to your instruction manual, which is online. And to make use of this port, specifically when you want to do BIOS flashback, where you see this is the black rectangular that says BIOS. Right at the top, you have a RJ45 socket and has a transfer rate of 2.5 gig. The Wi-Fi 7 socket, and it supports Bluetooth 5.4. Over here, this is the audio section where you have the microphone in, the line out for your speakers, and the SPDIF out. Now, as for the antenna socket, right, as this is provided, so it's quite straightforward. You don't have to screw in like the traditional way. This is the new way where you just plug it in. It's pretty straightforward. And to remove, you just pull it out. There's something which I find out. Assuming this is in fact your case where you have the standoffs for the M-ATX. In fact, there are a total of 6 screws, or should I say 6 standoffs for you to port your board. So having to port your board, right? Okay, you can align to the hole. So not an issue where you have the holes over here, 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 and here, but not at the center. So what I'm trying to say is that if I have to flip the board over, right, take a look. Okay, this circular areas, right, are meant for the standoffs. So we have a total of 6, as mentioned. Here, 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 and here. And at this center portion, right, there isn't any hole. In fact, this hole is mounting the PCIe bracket. I would advise that when you mount this board on a case itself, right, remove this center screw, which is at the middle, so that it will not stick this. Okay, as in like if you stick this, right, your board will be like pushing upwards. And to prevent scratches over here, right, this area over here, okay, as you can see, right, the mounting is the mounting is actually here. The 3 holes over here, which is here, and at the centerpiece, this hole, and the center, which is here. So at the center, right, what I'm trying to say is that please remove off this standoff, so that this will not push this upwards. Okay, to prevent scratches and to prevent damages of the board. So just make sure you do that. This is the part where I like what ASUS have done with this board. In fact, this is only found on high-end board. Well, as you can see, right, I did not plug in my 8-pin EPS cable nor any RAMs. So if I were to power up, right, see what happened? There are light indication, yellow, which means that you have no RAMs slot inside it, and red at the back, as you can see, it means your 8-pin EPS have not connected. This in fact is featured on the Pro Art, and this is on the board itself. Well done. So right now, if I were to plug the 8-pin, right, see, you'll be gone. So this is just to warn you, that telling you, hey, look, you have not plugged in your 8-pin EPS. And for the RAMs, right, if you have not plugged in, right, it's a reminder too. So when I slot the RAMs, okay, see, it's gone. Nicely done. Now I'm just going to turn off the lights just to let you see the ARGB effect on the crest. Okay, let me just off this. See, this is controllable as mentioned to you, right? Either you use the Armory crate, the Aura Sync to control it, or it has a feature in UEFI to toggle and to activate the add-on on Windows 11, where it has this dynamic lighting, which I will show you later. I've set up the system properly. As you can see, everything is in position. Now, just to show you the RAM training cycle. Now, if you are moving from Intel platform to AM5 platform, or migrating from AM4 to AM5, this is expected. For AM5 platform, there is a thing called RAM training cycle, whereby the system will verify the RAM, pull the JTAG code and the overclocking profile, and to recognize it before you boot into UEFI, and this will take a long period of time. Now, do take note, this is only for the very first time. Subsequently, when you do a reboot and such, right, it will be much faster once your RAMs are being verified by the system. Now, to fasten the process, right, I would advise you, before you boot up, make sure you have the latest BIOS on this motherboard itself. Do a BIOS flashback, download the latest BIOS and to flash it, cause whatever latest version which is on the AGISA version, that will help to reduce the RAM training cycle, and it will shorten the time. Now, on my left, you have this black screen over here. Now, this is connected to the board. So the moment once these are verified, it will boot into UEFI and it will show on the black screen. And in this black screen, there is this stopwatch, whereby the moment I press the start button, okay, I'm just going to use the motherboard start button. The moment I press this together with the stopwatch, right, you will witness how long it takes to verify the RAMs and to boot into UEFI. So here we go. At this period of time, do not touch the system. When the debug LED are lit up, just let it as it is. It will do the RAM training cycle. So once it's verified, see, it's pretty fast. As mentioned to you, right, this is in fact a very fast board having the latest AGISA. So once it's verified, it will boot to this. Okay, let me just pause. See? So this tells me that this RAM is being verified. And right now, I'm just going to boot into UEFI. So when I press on the F1 key, resuming the stopwatch, see, this is done. It booted within 28 seconds. This is how fast this board is. As all the boards have tested, right, on AM5, right, this is the fastest to actually do the RAM training cycle. And do take note, these are 32GB kit. Alright, cache latency of CL32, have a bus speed of 6000. And also something to note, if you were to put higher capacity RAM, like 64GB, 96GB, the RAM training cycle will be longer. But as you have witnessed, right, on a 32GB kit, it takes about 28 seconds to verify and to boot into UEFI. So I would say that 64GB and 96GB, right, is within the 1 minute, 2 minute mark. Now, as mentioned to you, the ARGB effect on the rear I/O, this crest can control using a plugin in Windows 11. But first of all, you will need to configure in UEFI. As you can see here, this is the UEFI. Just go to Advanced and look for Onboard Device Configuration. Click on it. And next, take a look at here where it says Window Dynamic Lightings. Now make sure you read this, and this is the prescription of what you should have on Windows, as in like the patch version. So once you confirm that you have this version of Windows, right, just enable it, which I will do it right now. Right now I'm just going to save and go into Windows and to show you. Now I go into Windows. What you need to do is just do a right click and click on personalize, and in personalize you will see this dynamic lightings. Now take a look at the crest over here. So what you can do is just to change. Right now it's actually under rainbow. You can set it to solid colors. See, it will change, and you can change the color by clicking to this. Okay, scroll down. Now let's say I want it blue. See, it will change accordingly. I want it red, it will change accordingly. Or if you want to do fancy stuff like breathing and such, right, you can just click on it and you will just breathe. See, you don't even need to install Armory Crate to control the crest, which is a good thing. And you can do things like wave. Oh, okay, this is wave. See, and you can define the colors also if you want to. Just go down the second color. See, it's a very neat function. Now to conduct the network test on the LAN connection and also the Wi-Fi 7 connection. As you can see here, the status, this is the board, which is the Strix B850-G. Right, and looking further, okay, from hardware info again. Now, so that this effect is from this motherboard. Now I've disabled both internet connection on the LAN connection and the Wi-Fi. I will start off with the Wi-Fi. So once this is verified, this should appear something. Okay, good. Now I'm just going to test this local to test on the Wi-Fi 7. And with this 160 MHz channel, right, you should get around 1400 or 1500 around there, which exceed the expectation. This is pretty good for the download speed and the upload speed. So this does check out locally. Next, I will switch this to another area. Probably I will say Kuala Lumpur, 196 miles away from us, and I'll do the test again. And if this server does supply 2 gig of transfer rate, right, which it does, see, it is still hovering around 1.4 1.6 gig, which is good. This is the download speed, and this is the upload speed. See, it matches, consistent, which is normal for a 160 channel bandwidth card. By the way, this is using a Realtek 8922AE Wi-Fi 7. Now I'm just going to disable this. When I disable this, right, this, when I click on it, it should be, no longer exist. See, next I will enable the LAN port, which is a 2.5 gig. And this is an Intel port, whereby it's I226V. Now it's connected. See? Okay. Back to local. I will do a test. And you should stay around 2.3. See? It works. As this is a 2.5 gig NIC. So having a download speed of 2.3 is around there. And for upload, see, same thing, 2.3. Now to test further, I will take, okay, another, I would say, let's see. Okay, I'll take DG Malaysia. Hopefully that this server does, provide either a 2 gig or a 5 gig transfer rate. So let's just test. See, it's still around there, 2.3 gig. And for the upload, just gotta wait. and it does 2.32. So this check out both ports, be it the LAN port or the Wi-Fi port, they are catered as specific on the specification page. Now is to test how much this motherboard can take when I plug in a high-end processor, which is a 9950X, and with this King Bang blade, or should I say sharp blade RAMs. And these are the limits that I've done on PBO2. PBT I set it to 230 watt, TDC 190 ampere, and EDC 200 ampere. Okay, as you can see over here, it's listed when I run the Cinebench and together with the Ryzen Master and the Firmark. Now, why am I using Firmark running together with Cinebench? Based on the fact that I want to stress both on the processor itself and see how much this motherboard can take. Then these are the curve optimizer that I've done, as this is a dual CCD processor. So I've set it the curve optimizer for CCD 0 as -20, CCD 1 as -15, and including of curve shaper. Again, if you wouldn't understand what this is for, right, probably I would advise you to check out on the description and to hit down to a content creator, as mentioned, Skater Bencher. He did an explanation on how to use the curve shaper. So these are actually all my setting. Now, as I run, right, these are pre-recorded. As I run, right, take a look at the Cinebench itself, where it has the time left over, and of course, the Firmark is running on the background together with the Cinebench. And these are all the base clock, the boost clock, and such. And this graph over here, right, is just to show you how capable of this motherboard is. Okay, and these are all the temperature and such, the power package, etc, etc. And this Ryzen Master, right, as mentioned to you, I've not done any alteration during this whole run. It will just show you the stats. So as you can see, this is the first few minutes, nothing much to see. So I'm just going to drag and go to that point where it's around 3 minutes. Yep. So I let it run. So at the 3 minutes run, right, take a look. What impressed me most is, in fact, the consistency and the stableness of how this motherboard hold. And it's able to hold up with my setting with a base clock of 5.155 megahertz, or should I say 5.1 gig for the base clock. And the boost clock, yes, it does 5.7 on some of the cores, which is quite nice. And the temperature, okay, not only on the CPU, but look at the motherboard, the VRM heatsink, and the chipset. These are hovering very well. Okay, these are related to the motherboard itself. It never went above 60 degrees Celsius. And mind you, my room temperature is around 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. This is here in Singapore, which is hot and humid. I've not turned on the aircon. So with this stats over here, right, and with the graph over here, this tells me that this board is doing an amazing job, which has a stability and also to sustain the clock speed. I have a wonderful and great experience with this Asus ROG Strix B850-G gaming Wi-Fi motherboard. It is full of surprises. First off, the design, it looks very sleek and is in white. If you are choosing a white build, this board might be for you. Next, the design, as mentioned, is very sleek. You have subtle labeling on the armor shield, and even on the board, the only thing that stands out is the word Strix, and a very nice embedded hologram design, which is for those who dare. If I will tilt it, see, very nice rainbow hologram effect. And best part is the top section where it shows the crest. This is ARGB effect. And best part is that, I'm so sorry to say, Asus, I do not like to run background application, and what you have done, right, is fantastic. You can enable in UEFI to set it to have windows to control this effect, which is known as the dynamic lighting. As I've shown you, right, it's easily done. You can even turn it off using Windows application. You don't have to install the Armory Crate. Well done. Now, next is the locking mechanism of this board. I like what they have done over here on the PCIe slot, whereby this locking mechanism, right, just release and you can just remove off your graphic card. And on the PCIe slot, right, it's basically enforced with a steel plate. Nice, or should I say steel frame. And best part is that this slot, there are no lane sharing. Whatever graphic card you plug in, be it generation 5 or generation 4, it will just run at full speed x16. Well done. The only thing that I would say is that for those people who wanted to stream and have a additional capture card, right, there isn't any additional PCIe slot, so take note on this. But overall, if you are just gaming, okay, pure gaming, this board is meant for you. Now, next will be the M.2. As I've shown you, right, it's toolless. To remove off the armor shield, you can just press this and to take it out. This is only meant for the top M.2. And best part is that not only this, they have done a very brilliant idea to put the Gen 5 at the second slot instead of the top slot. If you were to put at the top slot, right, okay, if ASUS is to cater this as Gen 5, imagine that you plug your GPU, it's generating heat, plus your M.2, which is generation 5, generating more heat. Your M.2 might throttle and will not perform. And this heat, right, might just, absorbed by the motherboard, which will affect the other areas. Okay, though you say it's very far away, but it does. A little bit of heat, right, does impact the performance, be your VRM, your RAMs, or even your M.2. So having the Gen 5 located at the second slot, well thought. Okay, let me just show you. So the M.2 area for Gen 5 is over here. So you are giving more space. Just imagine that you have plugged your graphic card, which is occupying over here. This allows the Gen 5 M.2 to dissipate heat nicely and it will spread out to the side. So there are more room. See? And to have a Gen 4 over here, right, it doesn't really generate that much heat. So it will not throttle. Compared to the Gen 5, it will be placed at the top slot. So well done, ASUTech, you've thought out everything. Nicely done. I like how you design it. And on top of which, right, all this mechanism to fasten the M.2 are toolless. Well done. Except for the rear over here, where you need to use the standoff that's provided and the M.2 screws. Now, another amazing fact is that be it the bottom section or the top section, right, all these M.2 are with no lane sharing. And best part is that all will run at full speed x4, inclusive of additional storage where you can plug bigger capacity 3.5-inch hard disk or 2.5-inch SSD. So this will resolve all your issues, whether you have enough storage, or to purchase expensive M.2 and such. So this is purely, in fact, for gamers. Now, with this said, right, coming to a point whereby, as I mentioned to you, there are 3 M.2 over here and 1 M.2 over here, which is running on full speed and of their generation specific. Now, for the bottom section, right, I will not mount a Gen 4 M.2 unless I'm able to cater a heatsink over here, whereby I will need to sort out cases which have big cutouts so that I can place the heatsink. If not, I will just place a Gen 3, as this area over here, right, which is generating heat, right, it might affect the last slot. See, heat accumulation. So this is something which I will do. But overall, as mentioned to you, I'm surprised that all the M.2s, right, is of Gen 4, Gen 5 and running on full speed. Additional, there are 2 more storage. This is more than anybody would want to have, to be honest with you. Majority will just have two M.2, but for me, right, it's a bonus point that there are so many M.2 slot I can fill up and to do storage and such, and inclusive of additional hard disk and such. Well done. Now, another point that I'd like to talk about is the warning signal on this motherboard. Fantastic. Imagine that you place this in a case, right, and you've forgotten to plug your 8-pin EPS, or you have not seated properly, right. There will be a red light indication over here telling you, hey, please check your 8-pin EPS. Did you forget it, or was it not connect properly? Nice touch. Inclusive of the RAM, whereby if there are no RAMs plugged in, right, there will be a amber light or yellow light. Or if you have not seated your RAMs properly, right, this will light up too. Well done. Also coming to the fact that this board has this start button. You can test this outside the case. So you can test out the component and to start, or probably install your M.2 with OS first before you plug into the case. Make sure that it works before you mount into the case. Well done. Now, besides this, right, it's shocking that the construction of this motherboard is of 8 layer. Okay, some of the M-ATX board, right, they are only 6 layer, but this board is 8 layer. With the price tag MSRP at $419, right, SGD, I would really consider this board if I'm actually a gamer. Okay, and best part is that it's not only the price, all the function it does check out very well. Performance, features, and everything. Plus the port, tons of it. And you can see there are two USB Type-C. One thing I wish that this tool, right, will be at 10 gig, where you can see here 20 gig. I hope that this, they will plug it to the front Type-C. So for convenience sake, right, if I were to have enclosure and such that has the capability of transferring 20 gig, I'm talking about hard disk or M.2, external enclosure, I can just plug at the front to have a 20 gig transfer rate. So this is one of the suggestion. And also based on the fact that, okay, I know that another board having a 5 gig port, I wish that this motherboard, this motherboard have that, and also a true 320 bandwidth channel to have a true Wi-Fi 7. Not say that 160 is not a true Wi-Fi. It is true Wi-Fi 7, but preferable 320. That will be a bonus point. Now, another factor to this, besides all that I mentioned, right, is on the fan header. Not say that they are not nicely allocated. They are nicely allocated, sufficient, but it will be great if they can create another fan header over here. Reason being, right, your rear fan of your case will have a shorter route and easier cable management just by plugging it to here, instead of routing all the way to the bottom and to connect over here. It's a hassle. And also another fact that hopefully that all this fan header, right, as suggested, though it's actually 1 ampere, I would prefer that these are all 2 ampere. So you don't have to buy additional hub or such if you're buying performance fans that has a amperage of one fan itself 0.5 ampere. Imagine that you have 3 daisy chain together, that'll be 1.5. So all this header, right, you can't use. You either have to split it or get a fan hub. So that's the only thing that I would suggest. Have a rear connector over here and all these headers, right, to be 2 ampere. Now that's all I got to say about this motherboard. It's more than pros and cons. And something to take note, when you mount this board in a case, take note on the whole mounting point for you to mount on the standoff. As this section over here, right, the middle part, supposedly there's a hole over here, and for you to mount the screw on the case standoff. So for the case itself, right, at this area, okay, it's supposed to be a hole. There's one screw over here. So imagine your standoff, right, is pushing this screw, okay, at the center. And when you screw this 2 point down, right, you will warp your board. So make sure on your board itself, remove off the standoff that is, you know, pushing this center screw. Okay, make sure you do that, so that when you place the board straight without the middle standoff, right, when you screw this 2-point, right, it will be flat instead of warping it. So that's the only thing that all of you have to take note if you are purchasing this board. As mentioned to you, the MSRP is 419 SGD. Okay, in USD should be 322. Will I consider this board if I'm a gamer? Definitely, if I'm doing a wide build. But make sure that you only require one PCIe slot. And all the feature set, right, is so surprisingly that, you know, it's future rich, inclusive of the port and such. I mean the USB port and such. Fantastic. Now, I will end here, but for those of you, right, watching right now, do not go away after I say goodbye, because at the end I'll talk about the BIOS interface and such. With this said, I'd like to thank Asus Singapore to have provided this unit for me to share with everyone. Thank you for everything. I have fun with this board, in fact. And for those of you actually new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and make sure to click on the like button. Also to click on the notification if you want to know more about my future content and such. With this said, as mentioned, don't go away. I'll just say goodbye. But at the end of this conclusion, right, I will show you the BIOS configuration and such. Take care. Goodbye. See ya. This is the UEFI interface where you have the easy mode or the advanced mode. I'll first start off with the easy mode. Starting from the top, you have this time date. If you click on it, you can set the time and date and to save it. Followed by the language, you can select, as you can see. So you will do set to Japanese, right? All the wordings will be in Japanese. So let me just set it back to English. Followed by the search. Now, if you know there's a certain function in your UEFI and you just want to go straight, instead of clicking here and there, you can just click on search or press F9. Then look for the function that you want to set. Let's say for example fan, when you click on it, see, you can just go direct and to set. Now besides this, right, this aura over here, when I click on it, there are different kind of function. Now I'm not going to go through everything. You can look at the balloon, pause here and look at the description. Followed by the resizable bar. This is meant for your discrete graphic card. It is always on. Unless you do not want it, you can turn it off. Now over at this section over here, these are the information of your motherboard, your processor that you're using, the speed and the memory that you have plugged on the motherboard itself. Over here is the CPU temperature, which gives you a graph, the vCore that is pulling from the system, and the motherboard temperature. Over at this section, it will show you the RAMs that you have populated on the DIMM slot. As you can see, A2 and B2. I populated 2 of the RAMs. And the storage info will tell you that if you have plugged in any NVMe or the SATA drive, right, it will show over here. Then this is the expo profile, whereby you can enable, see, or disable. It's just a one-click function. Followed by the fan profile. Now I'm using an Arctic Liquid Freezer 2, a older generation liquid AIO. So I only have the radiator fans listed over here. As for the pump, right, there are no readings, but I know that the pump is working. So in order to control all these headers, right, like the CPU fan, the chassis fan and such, except for the CPU op, because CPU op is following CPU fan, as mentioned to you during the orientation on the connection. So to control all these headers, right, just click on Q fan control. It will take you to this graph. And from here, right, you can declare based on this, you can set to PWM. And what is it monitor? When the temperature reach to certain level, right, then it will trigger the fan curve. And this is how the limitation that you can set on the fans itself. Take for example, this is actually the CPU fan, and this is the RPM of the CPU fan, which are my radiator fans. I can trigger at a minimum of 600 RPM, meaning to say it will not go below that. It will always be above 600 RPM, the lowest. Now, as you can see, all this profile, right, you can set. Right now, it's actually on silent. So if I were to set to turbo, right, take a look at the fan speed over here. See, you will pump up. So these are the profile that you can do, or you can set manual where you have all these points over here. So you can just graduate up and down and such. It's all up to you. Or you can even fill in the numbers over here if you choose to. Okay, based on the temperature and the duty cycle. Now, duty cycle is the percentage. Let's say you reach, okay, take for example, 50 degrees Celsius. You want the fan to spin at, let's say 60. Okay, as in like 60%. So this is actually how it works. But this is only through manual, right? If you feel that this is a hassle, you can just use the graph. See, you can move up and down, whereby below is in fact the temperature. So let's say you set temperature to 44 degrees Celsius, then you can pull up how much you want the fan to push. So you can either use this manual or you can use this mode. Alright, it's pretty straightforward. And all this are the temperature of your CPU, the motherboard, the VRMs and such. Now, next will be over this section. For easy tuning, if you are lazy, you just want a turbo boost automatically, right? You can set this to PBO enhancement. Okay, if not, you can just disable it, set it to normal. So there's only two functions. Now, for boot priority, it's pretty straightforward. Right now, I have the NVMe drive, which is my Windows OS. And this, right, I deliberately plug a USB thumb drive. So assuming this is another NVMe, or should I say M.2 storage, whereby it's with a Linux OS. If you want to boot default instead of Windows to Linux, you can just press the mouse button and to drag out. So this will tell the system, right, every time when you boot up, right, you'll be booting up on Linux. If you want it on Windows, you just again press on the drive that you wanted, right, then just leave it up or pull it up. This is the boot priority. Now coming to this, right, where you have this dashboard, it will show you a interface whereby what is connected. You can click on those points which are in green. Okay, then it will take you to the configuration page. Now next will be default. Then you say you set whatever you've set over here, right, to default. That means say is something like factory reset all your settings to default. Save and exit, I don't have to explain. Now to the advanced mode. Either you click over here or press F7. Now for the advanced mode, there are certain sections over here which you can go in-depth tuning. Now starting off with the favorites, how do all this come into this page? Basically, you just press either F3 or my favorite. It will give you this list. Now let's say you want certain function from the AI tweaker. You want to show the let's see, probably I would say GPU boost. Okay, let's say you want this, right, just click on the plus sign and it will show under this list. So when you go back to the favorites, right, when you scroll down, see, you have this GPU boost. If you do not want this, just go back to this my favorite folder, highlight on this and to click the cross. And once this is done, right, when you go back to favorite, scroll down, see, the thing is gone. So this is actually how you do the favorites. Now under main section, you tell you the BIOS version, the ARGB, and also the processor they're using, the RAMs and such, which I'm not going to go into details. As for security, it will just tell you this. Now you can set an administrator password when you configure all your UEFI configuration. For example, you have done your PBO2 limits and such. You wouldn't want your sibling to touch your configuration. So by setting an administrator password, right, your sibling can't, they can put into UEFI, but they need a password in order to do configuration. Or if you allow them to do configuration with their own profile, you can just use user password. Then you say on top of the administrator password, which is you can set a user password for them. so that when they do configuration, right, it will only be on their profile and not yours. Next, you have this AI tweaker. Now the first one, which most of us know, the AI overclock tuner. This is to enable the expo profile. Okay, and from here, right, you can configure all this up to you. The F clock, the core tuning configuration. I'm not going to do in depth, just to show you what they have over here. Then you can set even your CPU ratio and such. And these are the per core CCD that you can set for the vCore. Then turbo mode, AI cache boost and such, you can set. Alright, now coming to the DRAM timing control, right, if you know that your RAMs are 1:1 ratio, at this section you can scroll down all the way. Now this is also for you to tune if you are into hardcore RAM overclocking, right, you can do the timings over here. Okay, but I just want to show you the I would say the, hold on, let me just scroll down. This one, uClock DIF1 mode. Now by default it's actually auto. If you know that your RAMs is running 1:1 ratio, right, you can set to uClock equal to memory clock. And if your RAMs are above, or should I say around 6400 or above 6400 bus speed, then set to 1:2 ratio. Okay, this is the standard. But for me, this RAMs, right, is 6400, so I just set to 1:2 ratio. Okay, you can try to set to 1:1 ratio, but you have to do some tuning. Alright, so this is how it works. Now precision boost overdrive, I will not do it over here. Reason being, right, if you do it over here, right, you see, it's all very manual work. And even if I have to set to this, right, okay, it's kind of confusing over this menu over here, so I will not do the precision boost overdrive over here. Then come to the tune of the DGB RAM and such. This I wouldn't know what this is for. Okay, probably the performance based on Cinebench R23 and such, which I will not touch. Now come to the CPU core voltage. You can pump it offset just to lower down the temperature. Okay, you can set it to offset and negative value, and most of the time the offset value will be 0.05 for ASUTech. Okay, what this does is that during the pull on the vCore itself, take for example the default is 1.35 to run at 5.1 gig, take for example the base clock, but you know that the system does not, the processor does not need so much vCore. You can do a offset whereby the system will determine how much it takes for the processor to run at 5.1 gig with that voltage. So we just offset, and this will be lower. Instead of 1.35, probably it's around 1.28 or maybe lower, 1.12 and such. So you will not occur in pulling too much voltage. Instead, just nice voltage for the processor to run. So this will lower down the temperature. The rest I will not touch. Okay, I'll just leave it auto and such. You can feeder with it. Then these are the high RAM voltages you can set to, which I will not touch. Things like that. Advanced memory voltage, just to let you see. See, you can set. Now this is AI tweaker. Coming to the advanced mode, okay, just to show you trust computing, these are things that you will see. Alright, then for AMD FPP configuration, now this is default enabled from the firmware, and this is erase PPM NB for factory reset, right? This is normally for the processor itself. If you to change the processor, right, the previous processor that is having the memory on the system itself, right, on your motherboard, right, it will just ask you, do you want to erase it and to take in the new processor. Okay, and this is enabled based on the fact that you need to install Windows 11. That is one of the criteria. At all times I will not touch this. UEFI variable protection. Okay, this one I wouldn't have a clue what this is. I'll just leave it just to show you. CPU configuration. Okay, you can set all this. up to you. PCIe sub without the E, PCI subsystem settings. Now this is actually your resizable bar for your discrete graphic card. As mentioned to you, default these are enabled, so you don't have to touch any. USB configuration, things that you might want to enable and disable, it's all up to you. Then when it comes to network stack configuration, you can enable, disable. NVMe configuration is just showing you the stats, or you can do a self-test or long test, up to you. Alright, for this right, HDD SSD smart information, now there's none over here, so I don't have to worry. For SATA configuration, now something that you need to take note, if you want to plug any SATA hard disk and during the operation time on Windows itself, if you want to just unplug it, you know, without having to shut down the system, right, you can do that. But you will need to configure on UEFI, as you can see. Take for example this SATA 6G one, right? If you want to unplug it when the Windows is on, set the hot plug to enable. So on Windows itself, when you eject the SATA port, you can just pull out your hard drive. But make sure this is enabled, alright, not disabled. APM configuration, you can set this. For me, I'll use this function. Yep, I repeated this again and again in most of my motherboard review. As why I'm using this, because I use my smartphone to trigger the power on remotely on my system. And make sure when you do that, right, if you do know how to do that, right, make sure that it's on LAN connection and you can't do on Wi-Fi. Okay, I probably will have to do this and show you how it works one of this day. Now next will be onboard devices. Now for onboard devices, there are tons of things that you can set. As you can see, all this you can set, and things that you do not need, for example, like my onboard audio, right, I'm using a audio interface, so I don't need this onboard audio, I'll just disable. And one thing good about it is that things that you do not need, let's say you don't use Bluetooth, you can disable. Things that you do not need, right, just disable them. Reason being, right, you will make the system boot faster, you will bypass all this verification. Alright, now the lightings, as I show you, the Windows dynamic lighting, this is meant for your ARGB effects to be controlled in Windows plug-in for the rear IO ARGB crest. Okay, then this you can set if you want to. Then the USB power delivery state and such. Now PCIe link speed, you can declare all your slots. Okay, you want it Gen 5, Gen 4, etc. You can do that. For me, I'll just set it auto, leave it as it is. But a wiser choice, right, if you know what kind of device that you plug in, right, like generation 5 or generation 4, right, you can declare on it. So this will speed up the boot up time. Okay, next, okay, nothing much over here. Then next will be the MB configuration. These are the things that you can set. Alright, just to show you. Then for AMD CPS, same thing, just a brief through. CPU common. Alright, I'm just going to show you all this because I don't configure this. Just a brief introduction on what the advanced mode can do. So these are the things that you can set. Okay, which I will not touch. I'll leave everything to auto. Alright, now back to the top page. You have this. You have this. Okay, all are blank out. Okay, this you can set. Alright. If you know what these are meant for, you can go ahead and configure them. For me, I wouldn't have a clue what these are. Next will be the DF common option. You have memory addressing, ACPI, then this settings over here. Next you have UMC common option. Okay, more information on how to do the DDR. You can I wonder what this is. Okay, I'm not going to touch. So all this you can actually do the configuration. There are tons over here. Alright, I'm just going to click and show you what they are. Okay, probably you need to pause and have a look. It's going to take some time to go through. Wow, there's too many. So in-depth control, as you can see. Then DDR RAS. Okay, this I wouldn't have a clue what this are for, but just to show you, you can configure. Alright, these are in fact for more advanced user, if you know what you're doing. I'm just screening through and let you see what's going on. Okay. Alright, next, well, okay. Next will be the NDI O common option. Okay, you can configure over here. GFX configuration. Normally, these are the people who actually set the discrete graphic card and such. I mean the the integrated graphic on your processor. You can use this, which I do not touch. I'll just leave it auto. Audio configuration, if you know in advance about audio, you can set over here, see. Then PCIe loopback mode and such, which I will not touch either. SMU common option. Okay, you can set all this. Alright, so this is actually the advanced mode under AMD CPS. Then come to AMD PSB. AMD BPS. Okay, you can set. Okay, I will not touch this. Then come to the final one. This is where I will set the PBO2. As mentioned to you, right, on AI Tweaker, you have this precision boost overdrive. I will not use this. Instead, I'll use advanced under AMD overclocking. Then I'll just click on accept. And things that I will touch, right, most of them I will not touch. I will only touch on SoC uncall OC mode. I'll set this to enable for my RAMs to configure performance mode on the Infinity Fabric always. Then I'll set the precision boost overdrive, and from here, right, you can just set on advanced. Then you can set manual, and you can configure all the PPT, TDC and such. Then the boost scaler, scaler control, the boost clock override, all this you can set. Now throttle limit, it's like, you know, when you do configuration, right, by default it's actually 95. You can set it at lower, so when you reach there, right, you will not push your processor. Instead, you will just pull back so that it will not overheat. Then the curve optimizer for your integrated graphic, and the curve optimizer, you can do all core, per core, or per CCD. Right now, for per CCD, right, it's only meant for AMD processor that has dual CCD, like the 9950X or the 9950X 3D, or including the 7950X. Now, curve shaper, this is advanced PBO2 settings. If you are interested to know more about how to configure this, right, probably you can read from one of the content creator known as Skater. I think it's Skater Venture. That's right. I will leave the description in my URL. You can just click and read through, you know, how to actually do the curve shaper. So this is the PBO2, and that's it. All right, that's the end of the session of this advanced section over here. Next will be monitor. Now monitor, this is just like the Q fan that I showed you earlier, but in depth. You can see the thermal per section, inclusive of your RAMs. Then for fan speed monitor, Okay, things that you plug into on all these header, if you have fans on them, right, it will show. Alright, now for voltage monitoring, the health of your PSU supplying the power, like the 12 volt rail, the 5 volt rail, the 3 volt rails and such, it will show you over here. Next will be the Q fan configuration. Now this is just like you're doing it on the graph itself, like this. Okay, it's the same, but instead this is manual work, whereby you know that okay, this is actually my radiator fan. I've set to PWM mode and the profile is turbo and having the lowest limit at 600 RPM. Okay, then you can go through the chassis fan, like I mentioned to you during the connection, where you have chassis 1, chassis 2 and chassis 3 fans and such. So we can configure over here manually. Okay, and all this, right, have the fan profile, standard, silent, turbo, full speed or manual. Okay, manual, you have to key in all the points. I would advise you, if you want to do it manually, right, make use of the graph. You can just press F6 over here. Okay, as mentioned to you, click on manual, then use this point to drag. As mentioned, this is the temperature and this is the amount of speed you want your fans to ramp up. Okay, then you have the AIO pump. Right now it's actually auto detect. You can set it to PWM mode or DC, but for pump mode, right, I would advise you to run at DC or auto detect with full speed. Okay, or you can set manual, but when you set manual, right, try not to go like fluctuating and such. Make sure all are consistent. 80% of your pump. If it's too noisy, that is, but at all times, right, for me, okay, my favorite usage is to set the pump full. Okay, so this is how it works. Now chassis intrusion, this one, normally cases don't have this. I mean, if you DIY, if you have that, right, you can make use of this to enable to disable. And when you open up the case, right, it will prompt you with a alert signal, okay, or a message on your screen. So this is how it works for the chassis intrusion. Next will be boot up. Now boot up, CSM I won't touch. Secure boot. Now this is something which you will need to know if you're playing Valorant. This is actually a standard. So Valorant will prompt you saying that, oh, this is not a, I think some error message stating that this is not a secure secure boot configuration. So you have to come over to the UEFI and set to custom. Then you will be able to play Valorant. Now when you're playing Valorant happily and such, and if you want to reformat your hard disk to install a flash copy of Windows 11, right, make sure before you do that, come to this page here and set to custom. Then you do the installation of Windows, fresh copy of Windows. Okay, then the boot priority, as I shown you on the basic mode, where I shift the priority of your drive. So instead of using this, right, you make use of this over here. You can just select, see, as in like the boot priority 1, boot priority 2 and such. Now this is done. Next will be under tools. You have this ASUS Easy Flash 3 utility. This is for you to flash your BIOS through the UEFI, but I prefer to flash the BIOS using the BIOS flashback button at the rear of the IO. Okay, that will be a cleaner installation on the firmware. Then all this, you can see, you can roll back the BIOS and such. Secure erase, this is meant for you to erase your whatever M.2 that you have, right? See, I can select and erase, but I strongly advise you do not use this function. Okay, I have caused certain M.2, right? After the secure erase, right, I can't make use of the M.2. For secure erase, it's best to make use of your M.2 utility based on the brand itself and the model. It's a software application that comes with the M.2. Okay, so use that instead of using this to save you all the trouble and hassle. Okay, full HD setup. This is when you boot up. Okay, whether you want it enable or disable, up to you. The Q dashboard, as mentioned to you, these are the list of what is being connected, your RAMs, your fans and such. ASO user profile. Now, on all configuration that you've done in UEFI, right, you can save in user profile. See, if you want to save whatever configuration, you can just name and to save it. And at times, right, let's say you have certain profile 1 to 5, for example, you want, let's say you're right now on profile 1, you want to load profile 5. You can come back to this UEFI and to load. Okay. ASU SPD information, which is actually your RAMs. Alright, what are they made of? SK Hynix and such, it will tell you. And what are the JDEC? All these are listed over here. Next, ASU hotkey, my hotkey. Now you can preset the hotkeys right on UEFI. If let's say you want to toggle, you know, the F3 button to easy flash and the hotkey F4, right, to UEFI USB boot. Now when you save this, right, normally when you reboot the system, there will be some description prompt on the screen itself, so you are able to change this. Okay, for example, you can toggle this to boot in UEFI, PXE and such. But normally I'll not touch this, I'll just leave it as it is. Now this is a must for ASU driver hub. Set this to enable. So when you freshly installed Windows 11 on your system, the first time when you boot up, right, you will get this message to ask you to install all the related drivers for the motherboard itself. Okay, leave this on, so it's easier, one time, one click, you just install everything instead of going to the motherboard specific website page and to go on support and to download one driver at a time to install. This will save up a lot of time, or should I say not time consuming. Okay, I'm done with tools. Now come to exit. This is self-explained, I don't have to say much.